He stands in the silent armoring chamber, the air thick with the scent of blessed oils and cold ozone. Polished ceramite reflects the dim glow of lumen globes, turning his form into a collection of obsidian and steel effigies. For 3 standard hours he has not moved. His helmet rests on its magnetized console, its impassive faceplate staring into the same middle distance as his own bioengineered eyes. He is a warrior forged for a single purpose: to receive a command and to execute it with superhuman finality. He is the Emperor's judgment made manifest, a weapon of such perfection that an order given to him is not a request, but a statement of accomplished fact. He is a Space Marine, yet no order comes, or rather 2 have come, and in their contradiction, they have created a silence more profound and more terrifying than the roar of any battle. One from his chapter master, the living voice of his Primarch, commands him to hold this world, to guard its gates against an approaching shadow, for it is a sacred bastion of their order. The other, bearing the authenticated sigil of the Segmentum Command, speaking with the authority of the High Lords of Terra themselves, commands him to withdraw, to abandon this planet, and redeploy to a war zone a dozen light years distant, where a greater strategic threat is said to loom. He was made to obey. His mind is a fortress, every synapse fortified against doubt, every corridor of thought patrolled by the sentinels of hypno-doctrinal conditioning. But the architects of his soul, in their desperate genius, never conceived of this. They never conceived that the fortress would be ordered to simultaneously stand its ground and to surrender its walls. The conflict is not one of logic, but of foundation. It is a schism in the bedrock of his being, a command to tear his own spirit in 2. For the loyalty of a Space Marine is not a simple, monolithic thing. It is a vast and ancient architecture, built layer upon layer over centuries of blood and faith, and when its pillars are set against one another, the resulting cataclysm can level empires. To understand this crisis, one must first understand that a Space Marine is not merely a soldier who swears an oath. He is a being whose very identity is subsumed into a hierarchy of belonging so absolute that it replaces blood, family, and homeworld. The process begins in the fires of aspiration, where a young mortal is broken down to his constituent parts, body, mind, and spirit, and utterly remade. The psychomimetic conditioning he endures does not simply teach obedience, it engraves it upon his soul. He learns that his life is not his own. It belongs, first and foremost, to the Emperor of mankind. This is the capstone of the entire edifice, the final, divine authority from which all other loyalties flow. But the Emperor is silent, a distant god upon a golden throne. His will is not a direct command, but a subject of endless violent debate, interpreted through scripture, omen, and the blood-soaked annals of history. Thus, the most immediate and tangible loyalty is to the chapter. The chapter is his nation, his race, and his creed. Its name is the only one he will carry into death. Its honor is the only currency he values. Within the chapter, the bonds are layered with ritualistic precision. His most intimate connection is to his squad, his 10 battle brothers with whom he forms the unbreakable shield wall. He lives, fights, and expects to die alongside them. Their survival is interwoven with his own, their thoughts, often moving in such perfect concert that words are unnecessary in the heat of battle. Above the squad is the company, a brotherhood of 100 warriors led by a captain who is more than a commander. He is often a mentor, a spiritual guide, a figure of immense personal authority who embodies the chapter's martial traditions. For many Marines, the word of their captain is the only command they will ever need to hear. Yet all these loyalties are ultimately subservient to one living man, the chapter master. He is the inheritor of the chapter's legacy, the final arbiter of its laws, and the living conduit for the spirit of their Primarch. His authority is near absolute. To disobey the chapter master is, in a very real sense, to betray the chapter itself. It is to declare oneself separate from the brotherhood, to become an outcast, a renegade. The conditioning of an Astartes screams that such an act is a spiritual self-immolation, a fate worse than any physical death. The chapter master's word is the chapter's word for 10,000 years. This simple, brutal equation has held legions in check and kept the Imperium's scattered fists clenched in unity. But the chapter is not the Imperium. It is a single, autonomous component within a crumbling galactic empire, and that empire has its own masters. The High Lords of Terra, the council that governs in the Emperor's name, issue decrees that can move fleets and grind entire worlds to dust. Their authority is vast, impersonal, and bureaucratic. It is the authority of logistics, of strategy, on a scale that dwarfs the concerns of a single chapter. An inquisitor, bearing the full weight of the Holy Ordos, can requisition any imperial asset, including a Space Marine chapter, for his own inscrutable purposes. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the Adeptus Ministorum, all have their own claims, their own ancient pacts and charters that can place demands upon a chapter's sacred duties. These are the voices of the wider Imperium, the faceless architects of mankind's survival, and their commands, sanctified by millennia of tradition and law, are not to be taken lightly. Here, then, is the heart of the paradox. A Space Marine is sworn to the chapter, yet the chapter is sworn to the Imperium. He is sworn to obey his chapter master, who is in turn sworn to obey the High Lords, who are in turn sworn to enact the will of the Emperor. It is a chain of command stretching from a single warrior's soul to the silent heart of the throne world. It is a chain forged in an age of legends meant to be unbreakable, but in the decaying, war-torn galaxy of the 41st millennium, that chain is stretched taut, its links groaning under the weight of mistrust, isolation, and conflicting interpretations of duty. The question is not simply who to obey. The question is, which command most truly represents the will of the Emperor? Is it the immediate, trusted voice of the chapter master, who knows his warriors and his domain? Or is it the distant, abstract decree from Terra, a world most Marines will never see, issued by men they will never meet? There is no easy answer, for in the silence of the Emperor, every servant must become his own theologian. The choice a Marine makes in that moment of silence defines not only his own fate, but the very meaning of his sacred oaths. When such a conflict arises, it is never a simple matter of insubordination. It is a doctrinal crisis that engages every facet of a chapter's being. The initial order, countermanding the chapter master's own, is not met with immediate refusal, but with a paralyzing, ritualistic process of verification. Astropaths are questioned, their minds scoured for any taint or weakness in the message they received. The librarius is consulted, its psychers delving into the esoteric currents of the warp to seek confirmation or denial, a perilous task where a single misread sign can lead to damnation. The chapter's senior tech marines will analyze the communique's encoding, searching for cryptographic flaws or signs of enemy tampering. Every seal and sigil is compared against archival records, some of which may be thousands of years old. This is not merely procedure. It is a desperate attempt to find a flaw, an error, an excuse to dismiss the external command and restore the simple, clean line of authority they have always known. But when the message is proven authentic, when the order from a higher external authority is confirmed beyond all doubt, the crisis truly begins. The chapter command convenes, the master, his captains, the chief librarian, the master of the forge, the chief apothecary, and most critically, the reclusiarch. This is not a council of war, but a council of faith. The debate that follows is not about strategy, but about theology. The captains may argue for the pragmatic reality of their situation, their oaths to their men and the worlds under their direct protection. The librarian may speak of visions and portents, of fates intertwined and destinies that must be met. The master of the forge may speak of the sanctity of the chapter's relics and war machines, and the folly of abandoning them. It is the reclusiarch, the high priest of the chapter cult, who often holds the deciding voice. He is the keeper of the chapter's soul, the guardian of its creeds and catechisms of loyalty. It is his duty to interpret the meaning of honor and the nature of sacrifice. Does the chapter's ultimate duty lie in preserving its own strength, its own history, its own sacred ground, as the chapter master has decreed? Or does its duty lie in sacrificing all of that for the sake of a greater imperial good, as the High Lords have commanded? The reclusiarch will consult the chapter's most sacred texts, the writings of their Primarch, the histories of their greatest heroes. He will lead the assembled command in days of fasting and prayer, seeking guidance in the cold silence of the reclusium. His judgment, when it is finally delivered, carries the weight of 10,000 years of tradition. He might declare the external order to be a test of faith, a call to a higher form of sacrifice that transcends mere chapter loyalty. Or he might condemn it as a short-sighted bureaucratic folly, an insult to the chapter's autonomy, and a betrayal of the oaths they swore to their own people and their Primarch. His sermon to the assembled chapter will not be a suggestion. It will be a redefinition of their sacred duty. History is littered with the ghosts of chapters that faced this schism and chose their path. The Badab War stands as the ultimate cautionary tale, a conflict ignited when the Astral Claws, under their proud master Luft Huron, refused to submit their authority and tithes to the Adeptus Terra. What began as a dispute over jurisdiction and autonomy spiraled into a decade of brutal civil war, pitting brother against brother. Chapters like the Mantis Warriors, the Executioners, and the Lamenters sided with Huron, convinced that they were defending their martial independence against an overreaching and ungrateful Imperium. They were not traitors in their own minds. They were loyalists, true to their own interpretation of the Emperor's will. They saw the imperial authorities as corrupt and misguided and believed their defiance was a righteous act. Their eventual defeat and condemnation as renegades shows the Imperium's final answer to such questions, but it does not erase the legitimacy of the crisis they faced. Conversely, the tragic tale of the Celestial Lions illustrates the opposite choice. When their chapter was systematically and treacherously targeted by the Inquisition, they did not declare rebellion. They did not turn their guns on the Imperium they served. Instead, they continued to fight and die for it, protesting their innocence while honoring their duty to the Emperor, even as the institution meant to be his sword arm sought to exterminate them. Their loyalty to the ideal of the Imperium, to the Emperor himself, overrode their own survival instincts and their justified anger. They chose the path of the martyr, a path no less devastating than that of the renegade. In both cases, the architecture of loyalty was tested, and in both cases the result was ruin. These are not mere historical footnotes. They are the sacred parables told to young space marines, stark warnings of the fine line between honor and heresy, between righteous defiance and damnable pride. The silence between conflicting orders is a chasm into which entire chapters have fallen, never to return. Let us imagine a captain of the 8th Company, a veteran of 100 campaigns, named Lycomedes. His face is a roadmap of scars, his service studs tracing a lineage of honor back 2 centuries. His loyalty to his chapter master, a man who saved his life on the killing fields of Armageddon, is as solid as the adamantium plates of his Terminator armor. When the conflicting orders arrive, he feels the fracture first, not as a crisis of faith, but as a physical ailment, a cold knot in his twin hearts. He has spent his life executing commands without question, his faith in the chain of command absolute. Now that faith is a liability. His chapter master has ordered him to fortify the northern continent of the world designated Xylos, a barren rock that holds the tombs of the chapter's first heroes. It is their most sacred ground. The order from Segmentum Command, however, demands he and his entire company abandon Xylos and join the fleet in the Phalanx system, where an orc wagh of unprecedented size is massing. Lycomedes does not question his master's wisdom publicly, but in the privacy of his personal scriptorium he consults the tactical readouts. He sees the projections for the orc invasion. He sees the casualty estimates, the worlds that will burn if the fleet is not reinforced. And he sees the strategic value of Xylos, 0. It is a world of dust and memory, its worth entirely spiritual. To defend it is an act of honor. To abandon it is an act of logic. For the first time in his life, logic and honor are at war within him. He seeks out the company's ancient Dreadnought, brother venerable Cassian, who has slumbered for 500 years between battles. He presents the data, the two conflicting commands, to the sarcophagus. The Dreadnought's voice, a distorted metallic rasp, echoes in the chamber. The dead can wait, Cassian intones. The living cannot. A simple statement, yet it slices through a century of indoctrinated reverence. Meanwhile, the company's chaplain, an ascetic named Vorlag, preaches a different sermon. He stands before the assembled brothers, his Crozius arcanum held high, his skull helm a mask of cold fury. He speaks of oaths. He reminds them of the words they spoke when they were inducted, the promise to guard the chapter's history, to be the living memory of their Primarch. Terra is distant, he thunders, his voice amplified through the cathedral's speakers. Its lords are politicians and scribes who see us as assets on a galactic map. They do not know our blood. They do not know our dead. Our master knows. He speaks with the voice of our Father. To question him is to question the very soul of this chapter. To abandon our sacred dead for a war of logistics is to trade our spirit for mere survival. We are more than survivors. We are wardens. His words resonate with the deep-seated conditioning of the Marines. The chapter is all. The master is the chapter. The logic of Lycomedes' tactical displays begins to feel cold, hollow, even cowardly. The decision ultimately does not fall to them, but to the chapter master. Yet their counsel, their loyalty, and their dissent create the environment in which that decision is made. A chapter is not a monolith. It is a collection of hyper-violent, fanatically loyal warrior monks, each capable of immense feats of reason and passion. If a captain like Lycomedes, respected and beloved, voices his concern, it carries weight. If a chaplain like Vorlag invokes the Primarch's name, it can turn the tide of opinion. The crisis forces every Marine to look inward, to weigh the layers of his own loyalty. Is his oath to the man the chapter master, or to the office he holds? Is his duty to the letter of the law, or the spirit of the emperor's ultimate intention? Is it a greater act of loyalty to obey a flawed order that preserves unity, or to disobey in the name of a higher, more abstract truth? The answer's never clear. A Marine who chooses to obey his master against an imperial decree may be lauded as a hero for preserving the chapter's honor, or he may be condemned as a renegade, leading his brothers into a pointless rebellion. The Marine who chooses to obey Terra against his master's will may be hailed as a pragmatist who saved millions of lives, or he may be reviled as a traitor who broke his most sacred personal oath and fractured his own brotherhood forever. The tragedy is that both outcomes are equally possible, and the path is chosen in darkness. Now, as the 41st millennium draws to its bloody twilight, this ancient dilemma has become the defining crisis of the Adeptus Astartes. The Great Rift has torn the galaxy in two, sundering the Imperium and making a mockery of centralized command. The light of the Astronomicon, the beacon that guides interstellar travel and communication, is guttering and obscured. A message from Terra is no longer merely distant. It is a relic, a ghost from an unknowable past. An astropathic signal that traverses the warp might arrive decades or even centuries after it was sent, its meaning warped by the tides of the Empyrean, its context lost to the ages. The High Lords of Terra might as well be figures from mythology. In their absence, authority has collapsed inward. It has become local, immediate, and personal. For a chapter operating in the benighted regions of the Imperium Nihilus, the chapter master is not just a commander. He is the highest authority in the universe. His word is the only law, his judgment the only justice. There is no segmentum command to appeal to, no inquisitorial representative to consult. There's only the chapter, adrift in a sea of darkness, surrounded by enemies on all sides. In this new reality, the architecture of loyalty has been forcibly simplified. The layers of imperial authority have been stripped away by galactic catastrophe, leaving only the core bonds, brother to brother, company to company, chapter to master. This has forged many chapters into even more insular and fiercely independent brotherhoods, their trust reserved only for those who wear the same sigil upon their pauldron. They have become the sole arbiters of the Emperor's will in their dark corner of the galaxy, a responsibility that would crush mortal men. This isolation breeds a dangerous new form of pride. A chapter master who rules as a king for a century, who makes life and death decisions for entire star systems without oversight, may begin to see his own will and the Emperor's as one and the same. When a garbled message finally penetrates the warp storms, bearing a decree from a resurgent but still distant Terra, how is he to react? The order may be strategically sound, based on information he does not possess, but it may also be hopelessly out of date, a fool's errand that would doom his chapter for no reason. To him, the High Lords are no longer masters, but strangers. To his warriors, raised in darkness and taught that the chapter is their only sanctuary, an order from outside is not a command, but an intrusion. The instinct to reject it, to trust the proven leadership of their master over the ghostly voice of a lost empire, is overwhelming. Thus, the age of the Dark Imperium is becoming an age of schisms, not necessarily of open rebellion, but of 1,000 quiet secessions of the heart. Chapters that deviate from the Codex Astartes not out of heresy, but necessity. Chapters that ignore imperial decrees not out of defiance, but out of a pragmatic assessment of their own survival. They still fight the alien, the mutant, the heretic. They still cry the Emperor's name as they charge into battle. But they do so on their own terms, according to their own interpretation of their duty. They have become kingdoms unto themselves, their loyalty pledged to an idea of the Imperium that may no longer exist, rather than to its crumbling temporal power. The great danger is that this path, begun in pragmatism, can easily end in heresy. A chapter that becomes accustomed to ignoring the High Lords may one day find it easy to ignore the tenets of the imperial creed. A master who sees himself as the ultimate authority may be tempted by the whispers of forbidden power that promise to secure his lonely domain. The line between loyal protector and renegade warlord has never been thinner, and so it has been, across all the long centuries, The strength of a space marine is his unwavering loyalty, and his greatest trial is when that loyalty is turned against itself. It is a crucible that has forged saints and monsters in equal measure, for the path of righteousness and the road to damnation often begin at the same crossroads of choice. It is not the roar of bolter fire or the clash of chains wards that defines the soul of a space marine. It is the profound silence between two irreconcilable commands. It is in that moment of terrible stillness, when the architecture of his being threatens to collapse, that he must choose what the word loyalty truly means. Is it obedience to a man, to an institution, to a memory, or to a silent, distant God? In the end, what remains is the warrior in the armoring chamber. The reflection on the ceramite does not stir. His two hearts beat a slow, powerful rhythm, a biological engine designed for war, now idling in the grip of an impossible peace. The order of his master is the call of blood, of brotherhood, of the sacred earth beneath his feet. The order of the High Lords is the call of reason, of strategy, of the billion-strong flock he is sworn to protect. To obey one is to betray the other. To choose honor is to sacrifice logic. To choose logic is to abandon honor. His conditioning provides no answer. His faith provides only questions. He was forged to be a sword, but now he must be the hand that wields it and the mind that guides it. He must make a choice. And in this age of darkness, as the embers of the Imperium fade, the fate of galaxies can turn upon such a choice made by a single soul in a silent room, a universe away from a throne of gold. His decision, when it comes, will not be recorded in any grand history. It will be a quiet act of faith or a quiet act of treason. And perhaps in the chilling calculus of this dark millennium, there is no longer any difference between the two.